Accreditation is essentially where educators allow an outside agency to judge and credential them. And prior to 1925, it doesn't exist in engineering. Medical schools were accredited, dental schools were accredited, nobody accredited engineering programs. And it was the American Institute of Chemical Engineers who seized on the idea of unit operations that Little had been working with at MIT, that came up with the idea of using that to reorganize chemical engineering curricula generally. And with Little as chairman of the committee, they went out and looked at, by that time, all 78 different chemical engineering programs, and basically judged them by how completely they had incorporated chemical engineering in the form of unit operations. Did they have courses labeled chemical engineering instead of mechanical chemistry? And did those emphasize unit operations? And they came back, they met with representatives of all the chemical engineering programs, introduced the idea of unit operations, went out to each of the 78 schools, came back in 1925 and said we found 14 schools, MIT of course among them, that are doing it the right way. And at the time, I think they didn't realize that what they had done was so important. Well, what they found is all of a sudden they had these other 60 some odd schools that hadn't gotten on that list clamoring for a repeat visit by representatives of the AICHE's Committee on Education to come back and see how we've now revised it. Can we get on that list? And that was a rather stunning thing, because engineers had generally believed, working engineers in industry, that educators would not pay any attention to them. And all of a sudden they found out some cases they would. So Little's concept penetrates all through academia, through the American Institute of Chemical Engineers Committee on Education, which in the critical period in the early 20s was chaired by Little. And in the 1930s, when other engineering schools were trying to figure out how to change, they had had this big study by William Wickenden of engineering education generally, and Wickenden was trying to figure out, how do we get schools to accept our recommendations? And they take a look at this little small society that had done that had worked out a way to get schools to accept their recommendations. And Wickenden's committee basically tells the rest of the engineering disciplines, you got to imitate what the American Institute of Chemical Engineers has done in chemical engineering. You have to create an accreditation system that makes schools want to get on the approved list through periodic visits and a campaign to let them know how we want them to change. And accreditation spreads from chemical engineering then to the rest of the engineering profession about a decade after it had gotten solidified in chemical engineering.